time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Make sure you place your bets in person at the sportsbook in either Lincoln or Omaha. Best bets must be placed in person, but you can get the app. You can build those bets before you get there and be ready to go right when you walk through the doors. It is the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Go to warhorsecasino.com for a full list of details and house rules. DB.
What up?
We had a little bit of an interesting weekend.
It was wild.
There was
talking about interesting.
Well, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot of upsets.
A lot of upsets. We had some.
That's interesting? That's wild.
I think upsets are interesting.
Interesting is like trying to figure out how spiders spin webs.
Trying to figure out if crickets are smarter than we are?
Yeah. Idiot. Not freaking South Carolina and Louisville and...
So South Carolina, that one had a stinky line coming in.
Yeah, 100%.
That was only a 2.5-point favorite.
Wasn't worse than Minnesota's.
No, it sure wasn't.
Shoot, for as right as I was about Minnesota, I was dead wrong about Michigan State.
I mean, you looked pretty smart for a quarter.
Oh, I know.
You looked real smart for a quarter.
Yeah.
And then
life happened.
Signetti happened.
Yeah.
The Kurt of it all happened. And we didn't even nobody talked about Houston.
Oh, yeah, K-State. Yeah.
Like that's a
wait, and Houston has doesn't Houston have a losing record?
Yeah, they are now 4-5 after the win. Like that's been a pretty rough Houston team this year.
Yeah,
and a pretty good K-State team. They were 7-1 going into that one. That's a wild one. So you had 3 pretty major upsets.
Do you know one thing that I'm glad in this whole thing that I never gave credence to?
We didn't even talk about Louisville, but yeah, go ahead.
At no point was as bad-mouthy and as hard as on Deion as you were, and you said it was because I was a fan as a kid.
Yeah.
Do you know what it really is?
What?
I don't care what a coach's style is necessarily, as long as his players buy into it. So I'm always very reluctant.
Here's where I struggle with Deion on that, though, is there's enough guys that have left the program.
That just means it wasn't for them.
Maybe.
It doesn't, you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Because that just means it wasn't for them.
Here's the one thing that I would say about that versus like Matt Rule, for instance, right? There's guys that leave this program, not a lot, but there's guys that leave this program that I would be stunned if any of them had anything close to say about Matt Rule that people have had to say about Deion. Like, it's okay.
But that's just different, though.
No, but it's okay if a situation's not for you and like, hey, you're just not going to be able to cut it here. And that's different. You can still treat them like humans. That's where I get lost with Deion. Is it just doesn't like it's. We talked about the transactional nature that Matt Rule tries to get away from. It feels very transactional with Deion for me.
Well, sometimes I wish he would be more transactional.
You're not wrong. Like, I think you're right. There are situations here where it's like, hey, probably, and I brought this up. I think it was to Adam, actually. I think I was DMing Adam during the game. And I go, is there a certain point where you just sit there and you go, hey, these old guys might be older guys on the team, might be really good dudes, and they might even be good players. At some point, do you just have too much of the DNA of what's been going wrong before that you got to just move on?
Yeah.
Like, is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Because I think I look at some of these guys. And
do I need to go back to the we haven't won with you bit?
That's what I'm getting to, right? Because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at guys, and I'm going to say names because this is who I'm looking at.
You don't have to couch it.
Yeah. Like, I look at Isaac Gifford. I look at a guy that I think is really talented, that could be really good, that I don't think's playing the way he needs to for Nebraska to be who they think they can be. I'll even look at a guy, and Ty's been a little up and down. I think Ty Robinson has had times where he's played really, really well. I think there's been times where he has not met the moment. I think Nash is the same way. I think Deshaun Singleton's the same way. I think there's a lot of guys on that defense that maybe have just experienced the wrong thing for too long, and they're just not going to be able to get there in the time frame that they've got left with Nebraska. So what does that leave you to do if you're Coach Rule? Because I think he sees these guys and he says, hey, I can't ask for Gift to do anything more. He's doing all the things I ask him to. The only thing I can ask him to do more is to play better on Saturdays. Well, at some point, that's the thing, right? At some point, the playing better on Saturdays doesn't matter if you've done everything right. Doesn't matter if you're a shining example of everything Sunday through Friday, at some point, the playing better on Saturdays is the thing. And that's where you're right. When you say maybe Coach Rule needs to be a little bit more transactional. That's why I use the term PTSD from Carolina of not wanting to be transactional. He's brought this up, that it was too transactional of a league for him. And I get that. And I appreciate that about them. I truly love that about him. I do. Because I want him to treat people like people. But at some point, like, there needs to be like a chief borders of the situation and be like, hey, we love you to death. It's not going to work here for you football-wise. We love you. You're a great person. Maybe there's a better opportunity for you somewhere else.
Yeah, you're going to see that. I mean, I think it happens. It needs to happen as much on offense as it does defense. But
100%, yeah. There's just older guys on defense. That's why I went there.
Vincent Jackson didn't play this week. Princewell seems to have
be on a milk carton.
Disappeared. You did get back to playing Cam a little.
There was even a captain this week.
Which, the thing about,
which I thought was odd.
I
thought it was weird.
I don't have a backstory to like.
I just observation, like real time. I thought it was weird.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to have some receivers step up. And maybe it's Nair, but does Nair carry himself on a daily basis like somebody you'd want to rally with? That part I don't know. I don't know. Like, Banks at some point, you got to make some plays on some 50-50 balls, right? As a quarterback, like sometimes you just have to make throws.
Yeah.
And it's independent of your OC. Like it's just frustrating for me that we seem to. Listen, I'm as good of friends with Dom as anybody, but sometimes you have to be able to say, Dom, you know what? He's got to play better, and it's independent of
anything else.
Coach Sad. I asked Sam the question. I'm like, why do we keep pinning this whole? We pit Sad against Dylan's progression. Like, you call plays not expecting the worst. Sometimes you just have to execute, right?
And if you get guys open,
they got to throw them the ball.
They got to be thrown, right?
So I think it's we've picked sides on this deal, which is unfortunate because when I prefaced the thing to Sam, for as good of players as I once upon a time played with, it was never about an individual player. Like. Nobody, like, people were just as mad at T. Fraze for Iowa State as they were, whatever.
Internally, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's like.
Because as fans, we always make it about a player or a couple players. Or
well,
whatever.
I can't believe they didn't, T. Fraze looked like, look, man, I got to own that. Like, I'm part of this deal. I know he said, I just sat with it. Like, I just saw this dude.
Yeah, you're not speculating.
I'm not speculating. Yeah. I just
you talked to him
Saturday over halftime, right? Like, and I think you could appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like I said, for as good as Wiegert was, it's not like, well, what did Zach say? No, man, it was, what did Coach Tenenper say?
Yeah.
Right?
Is it possible Nebraska doesn't have strong enough personalities in the coaching room right now to have it be that way?
I think if you have a lot of loyal guys, you better have a guy that can say, wait a minute, from my vantage point, I see this.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to rock the boat.
Yeah.
If that's what it is, right? I mean,
how fine of a line is it between having a guy that's willing to rock the boat and having a guy that's like not a part of what you're doing, like not about what you're doing? Because that, to me, that seems like it would be a tricky balance.
I don't know. I mean, I look at it like I couldn't work if I had to work with me. I couldn't do that.
What do you mean?
Like, I would need somebody different from me.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
To get me at my best. So, maybe some of the self-awareness is like that, right? Yeah. I need a certain blend or balance to get the best out of me. I don't think that should be foreign to guys that hire people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's fair.
Well, if this person has this kind of personality profile, I probably for the greater good or to get the best out of them, I probably need to surround them with this.
Is it, man? I'm trying to think of somebody like this. Is it weird that and I don't know, this was a weird fit at the time. The guy I thought of was like Whipple, who just like was okay, not like rocking the boat, but not necessarily okay being a part of everything else.
Well, so I think that's the human element that Adam was talking about, where with meshing of personalities.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do need guys. Could you say to Whipple, "Hey, Whip, man, we need to run the ball," and Whip lobby the middle finger? I mean, he might.
Yeah.
But that's counterproductive to the end game, even though he's a polar opposite.
Yeah.
He's just defiant. So
right.
you got to.
So there's a difference.
So
between
there's a difference.
Okay, I think that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between rocking the boat and being defiant?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the tricky line to walk.
Which
sometimes.
is why you typically always start with loyalty, and sometimes that can get you in trouble.
Jack, hold on the line here. We'll get you. That was Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. We'll finish up Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.